Facts and trivia about the World Cups, the most embarrassing match. In Spain, 1982, one of the darkest moments in World Cup history took place. West Germany and Austria needed a very specific result to qualify both teams and eliminate Algeria. A narrow German win was enough for both, and that's exactly what happened. Germany scored early, and the last 80 minutes were just passing the ball around with no real attempt to attack from either side. Both teams implicitly agreed to that result in front of everyone. The Spanish crowd in the stands booed them throughout the entire second half. Some fans even waved money to mock them. That match went down in history as the Disgrace of Gijón, or the Gijón Pact, and it was directly responsible for the rule that since 1986, the last matches of each group are played simultaneously, so that this can never happen again. Brazil is the only team that has participated in absolutely every World Cup in history. 21 out of 21 without exception. From Uruguay 1930 until today, no one else can say that. In second place is Germany, with 19 appearances in 21 editions, only 2 absences in its entire history, in 1930 and 1950. Do you know what those 2 years have in common? Uruguay was world champion in both editions, and since Germany returned to participate in 1954, Uruguay has not won a World Cup again. Pure coincidence? You decide. Now, the saddest case on this list. Luxembourg has played in every World Cup qualifying campaign since 1934, every single one, without missing a single time. And in all that time, they've never even come close to qualifying. Not even once in 90 years. You have to respect that perseverance. Indonesia holds the record for the shortest debut in history. In 1938, they participated under the name Dutch East Indies and played exactly one match in World Cup history. Just one, against Hungary. They lost 6-0, didn't score a single goal, and haven't returned since. The curious thing is that this record of just one match is shared with China, Trinidad and Tobago, and Zaire, and none of them scored a goal in that single appearance. Indonesia also hasn't returned to the World Cup since 1938. More than 80 years away, one of the longest streaks without appearing in a World Cup. A record that is curiously shared with Cuba, which also hasn't returned since that 1938 edition. Wales took 64 years to return to a World Cup. Their only participation before Qatar 2022 was in Sweden 1958, where they reached the quarterfinals. Who eliminated them? Brazil, with a goal by Pelé, who was 17 years and 239 days old. The youngest goal scorer in World Cup history. But if there's a national team with an impossible relationship with the World Cup, it's Scotland. 8 World Cups played, 8 eliminations in the group stage. 8 times they made it, 8 times they left in the first round. Incredible, isn't it? South Korea matched that number of group stage exits, but they did advance twice, reaching the 2002 semifinals as hosts, a tournament noted for its controversies. The highest scoring World Cup in history, the 1954 World Cup in Switzerland, has the highest average number of goals in history, 5.38 goals per match. The results of that tournament look like something out of a video game. Hungary beat South Korea 9-0, and Turkey also beat South Korea 7-0. And the match with the most goals in World Cup history happened in that same tournament. Switzerland versus Austria ended 7-5, 12 goals total. Switzerland was winning 3-0. Austria came back to lead 5-4, and in the end, won 7-5. And that match was played in 40-degree heat. And in the 1954 World Cup, Hungary was the most brutal team of the tournament, scoring 27 goals, the most ever in a single World Cup appearance. The best goal difference in World Cup history, plus 17. And even so, they didn't win the World Cup. Germany, the same team they had thrashed, came back in the final and beat Hungary 3-2. That match went down in history as the Miracle of Bern. Mexico, and its not-so-enviable records. Mexico has the most World Cup losses, 27, surpassing Argentina and Germany, who have played in more tournaments. And in their first appearances between 1930 and 1950, they lost 9 consecutive matches. 9 without winning one, without even drawing one, until in 1958 they managed to draw with Wales at the end. They are also the team that has suffered the most heavy defeats in World Cup history. But the most well-known thing about Mexico in the World Cups is the curse of the 5th match. They reached the round of 16 7 times in a row and were eliminated each time. No team has ever been eliminated more times consecutively in the same round. Miroslav Klose is the top scorer in World Cup history, with 16 goals in 4 tournaments. But if we talk about a single tournament, the record belongs to Just Fontaine from France, who scored 13 goals in his only World Cup in 1958. 13 goals in a tournament with few matches. a record that has been untouchable for decades. The first goal in history was scored by Lucien Laurent from France on July 13, 1930. At the 19th minute of the match between France and Mexico, France won 4-1. Laurent scored the first World Cup goal in history with a volley. And interestingly, that player lived until he was 97 years old, which means he witnessed decades and decades of the tournament's history that he himself helped to inaugurate. The match with the most spectators in World Cup history was in Brazil 1950. The match that would decide the champion between Brazil and Uruguay played at the Maracanã in Rio de Janeiro. 185,000 spectators, the biggest crowd in football history. All of Brazil was expecting to be crowned champion at home, but Uruguay won 2-1. The silence that fell over the Maracanã at that moment. That result is forever known as the Maracanazo, and the Brazilian goalkeeper from that match, Barbosa, carried that defeat for the rest of his life. People insulted him on the street decades later. In 1993, when he went to visit the Brazilian national team as they prepared for the next World Cup, they didn't let him enter the sports complex.
Dijeron que daba mala suerte.
They say being a goalkeeper isn't hard, but you carry the team's weight. Barbosa died poor and alone in 2000, still paying for a result from 50 years before. One of this sport's most unfair stories. The Mineirazo. If the Maracanazo was Brazilian soccer's deepest wound, the Mineirazo was the century's. July 8, 2014 World Cup semifinal. In Brazil, in Belo Horizonte, Brazil versus Germany. The result, 7-1-7-1 at home, in their own World Cup. No Neymar, no Thiago Silva, no shield. Prayers couldn't help. And in that same match, Miroslav Klose scored his 16th World Cup goal, becoming the top scorer in World Cup history, surpassing the record held by a Brazilian, Ronaldo Nazario, who had 15 goals. A German breaking the record of a Brazilian in Brazil, on the worst day in their history. Football sometimes seems scripted. The fastest goal in history was scored by Hakan Şükür from Turkey.
11 segundos. El árbitro apenas había pitado el inicio.
In the third-place match at the Korea-Japan 2002 World Cup. And speaking of things that happened twice, in Spain, 1982, during a match between Kuwait and France, Sheikh Fahad Dalagent, brother of the Emir and president of the Kuwaiti Federation, came down from the stands to the field and spoke directly to the referee to have a goal disallowed. And the referee disallowed it. France scored again anyway, but the referee was suspended for life, which I think is pretty fair. The only coach who won the World Cup more than once was Vittorio Pozzo with Italy in 1934 and 1938. No one has repeated it, even though Mussolini ruled the country in both editions. The pressure on referees and opponents was obvious. Do you think it was a tainted World Cup? India qualified for the 1950 World Cup because their rivals withdrew. The spot was handed to them on a silver platter and they turned it down. The official version says that FIFA didn't let them play barefoot, as was their custom. India turned down a spot at the World Cup, something that thousands of teams dream of achieving. And from Chiton to Guiliejo, let's continue with the team that played without a country. At the Germany 2006 World Cup, Serbia and Montenegro took part. The problem is that country ceased to exist on June 5, 2006. A few days later, the team made its debut on June 11, representing a nation that no longer existed. They played the whole tournament like ghosts, finished last, and disappeared from the map. If you made it this far, don't leave yet. You have to watch this video I'm showing on the screen. Give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.